stop scrolling. You think you know how the 1% behave? You have no idea. We're talking about a girl so entitled, so destructive, that grown men, security guards, hotel managers, even her own father's handlers, trembled when she walked into a room. They called her the untouchable. She could ruin a career with a single phone call. But on a rainy Tuesday night in New York City, inside one of the most exclusive restaurants on Fifth Avenue, she met her match. Not a cop, not a lawyer, but a waitress named Sarah who had absolutely nothing left to lose. What Sarah did that night didn't just silence the room. It exposed a dark family secret that the billionaire father paid millions to keep buried. This is the story they didn't want you to hear. The incident took place at the Obsidian, a restaurant so exclusive that the menu doesn't have prices and the reservation list is managed by a former intelligence officer. It's the kind of place where senators make handshake deals in the back booths and tech moguls celebrate their IPOs with $10,000 bottles of Chateau Margaux. The staff at the Obsidian were trained to handle anything. They were stoic, invisible and efficient. They had weathered rock stars throwing televisions and politicians having affairs. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared them for Jessica Sterling. Jessica was 19 years old, the only daughter of Arthur Sterling. You know the name. Sterling Logistics, the man who effectively owns the shipping routes between the Pacific and the Atlantic. Arthur was a ghost, rarely seen, powerful, terrifying. His daughter, however, was loud. It was 7:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. The dinner rush was just beginning to swell. The heavy oak doors swung open, and the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jessica walked in, flanked by 2 personal bodyguards who looked more like exhausted babysitters than security. She was wearing a vintage Chanel dress that probably cost more than the general manager's car, and she was already screaming. I said a window seat. Her voice wasn't shrill. It was low, venomous, and carried across the velvet-carpeted dining room. Do you need me to spell it out for you, or are you just incompetent by birth? The maitre d', a man named Julian, who had worked in Paris and London for 30 years, looked as if he was about to faint. Miss Sterling, please. We have your usual booth prepared in the VIP section. It's more private. I don't want private. I want the window, she snapped, snapping her fingers in his face. Move them. She pointed a manicured finger at table 4. Occupying table 4 were an elderly couple, likely celebrating a golden anniversary. They froze, forks halfway to their mouths. Miss Sterling, that table is occupied, Julian whispered, sweat beading on his forehead. We cannot. Buy their dinner. Buy their car. I don't care. Move them. Now. This was the Jessica Sterling experience. It wasn't just bratty behavior. It was psychological warfare. She thrived on humiliation. She didn't just want what she wanted. She wanted to see someone bleed to get it. In the kitchen, the line cooks paused. The servers exchanged terrified glances. Everyone knew the protocol. Give her whatever she wants. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak unless spoken to. Except for Sarah. Sarah was 34, though the dark circles under her eyes made her look older. She had been working at the Obsidian for only 3 weeks. She was a shadow, a floater waitress assigned to pick up the slack wherever needed. She was invisible to the management, just a warm body to carry trays and refill water glasses. Sarah stood near the service station, clutching a pitcher of ice water. She watched the scene unfold with a strange, detached expression. She didn't look scared. She looked tired. Julian, the maître d', capitulated. He walked over to the elderly couple, whispering apologies, offering free champagne, humiliating himself to displace 2 nice people just to appease a teenager. The couple, confused and embarrassed, gathered their things and were shuffled to a dark corner near the kitchen. Jessica sat down at the window table with a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't look at the view. She just wanted to know she had won. "Menu," she demanded, not looking up. Her bodyguard, a man named Davis, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour, sighed. "Miss Sterling, your father said, 'Daddy isn't here, Davis. Sit down and shut up.'" The entire restaurant was held hostage. The atmosphere was brittle, like dry leaves ready to catch fire, and Sarah, tightening her apron strings, realized that tonight the fire was inevitable. By 8 p.m., Jessica had sent back 3 dishes. The soup was swill, the risotto was glue, the Wagyu beef, imported directly from Japan that morning, was dog food. With every rejection, she humiliated the server. She made a young waiter named Timothy cry in the hallway because she told him he smelled like cheap detergent and failure. Timothy was putting himself through law school, working double shifts, and that comment broke him. The general manager, Mr. Henderson, was hiding in his office. He was on the phone with Arthur Sterling's personal assistant, trying to get authorization to shut down the VIP section, just to contain her. But Arthur Sterling was in a blackout zone in Zurich. There was no help coming. Then came the wine incident. Jessica, despite being 19, demanded a bottle of the 1996 Dom Perignon. "Miss, I cannot serve alcohol to a minor," the sommelier said, his voice trembling but firm. It was the one law they couldn't break, even for a Sterling. Jessica stared at him. She picked up her glass of sparkling water and poured it slowly onto the white tablecloth. "Oops," she said, deadpan. "Clean it up and bring me the champagne, or I call my father and tell him you touched me." The room went silent. It was a lie, a nuclear lie. An accusation like that could end a man's life, ruin his reputation forever. The sommelier went pale. The bodyguards shifted uncomfortably but did nothing. They were paid to protect her physically, not morally. I, the sommelier stammered. "Do it," she hissed. "Open the bottle." That was the moment the energy in the room shifted. It wasn't fear anymore, it was disgust. But paralyzed disgust. No one moved. The wealthy patrons looked down at their plates, unwilling to intervene and risk the wrath of the Sterling Empire. Sarah, watching from the service station, felt a cold knot in her stomach. She knew that look in Jessica's eyes. She had seen it before, years ago, in a life she tried desperately to forget. It wasn't power. It was pain masquerading as power. But that didn't make it any less dangerous. Sarah set her water pitcher down. She smoothed her skirt. She walked over to the sommelier, who looked like he was about to vomit. "I'll take this table, Henri," Sarah said softly. Henri looked at her like she was insane. "Sarah, don't. She'll eat you alive." "Go to the kitchen, Henry. I've got this." Sarah turned to the table. She didn't smile. She didn't bow. She stood with a straight spine, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. She looked at Jessica Sterling, not at her expensive dress, not at her diamonds, but directly into her eyes. "The champagne isn't coming," Sarah said. Her voice was calm, almost bored. "What would you like instead? A Diet Coke, or perhaps an iced tea?" Jessica blinked. She wasn't used to people speaking to her in a normal volume. People either yelled or whispered. "Excuse me?" Jessica laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Do you know who I am? I will have you fired before you can finish that sentence. I want the champagne." "No," Sarah said. "No." Jessica's face reddened. She slammed her hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "Get me the manager. You're done. You are finished." "Mr. Henderson is busy," Sarah said, not moving an inch. "And the sommelier is busy. You have me. And I'm telling you, you aren't drinking tonight. Now the chef has prepared a lovely sea base. I can put that order in for you, or you can sit here and starve. It's your choice." The bodyguards looked at each other, stunned. Davis, the head of the detail, actually looked intrigued. He'd never seen anyone stand their ground like this without screaming. Jessica stood up. She was tall, imposing in her heels. She grabbed the bread basket from the table and hurled it at Sarah. It happened in slow motion. The basket struck Sarah in the shoulder. A bread roll bounced off her cheek. Crumbs scattered across the pristine floor. The restaurant gasped. This was assault. Sarah didn't flinch. She didn't wipe the crumbs away. She just stared at Jessica. "Pick it up," Sarah said. "What?" Jessica breathed, her chest heaving. "Pick it up!" Sarah's voice dropped an octave. It wasn't a request. It was a command that carried a weight of authority that felt ancient and terrifying. Jessica laughed, but it sounded nervous this time. "You're insane. I'm a Sterling. I don't pick things up. People like you pick things up for people like me." "Not tonight," Sarah said. She took a step closer. She entered Jessica's personal space, a violation of every service industry rule in the book. "You threw it, you pick it up, and then you are going to apologize to Henri." "I will destroy you," Jessica shrieked. She grabbed her phone. "I'm calling my father. I'm calling the owner. I'm going to buy this building and turn it into a parking lot just to fire you." "Go ahead," Sarah said. She reached into her apron pocket, pulled out her own cheap, cracked smartphone, and tossed it onto the table next to Jessica's gold-plated iPhone. "Use mine if you want. It has better reception in here." Jessica froze. The lack of fear was confusing her. Bullies operate on a currency of fear. When the bank runs dry, they panic. "Who do you think you are?" Jessica whispered. "I'm the person telling you the truth," Sarah said. "And the truth is, you're not angry, you're bored, and you're lonely, and you're acting like a toddler because it's the only way you know how to get attention." "Shut up!" Jessica raised her hand as if to slap Sarah. Davis, the bodyguard, lurched forward to intervene, but he stopped. Sarah didn't flinch. She caught Jessica's wrist in mid-air. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. A waitress had just laid hands on Jessica Sterling. Sarah didn't squeeze. She didn't hurt her. She just held the wrist firm, grounding it. "Don't," Sarah said. Her eyes were sad, deeply, profoundly sad. "I know you think hitting me will make you feel better. It won't. I've been hit by people much stronger than you, Jessica. It never fixed their problems, and it won't fix yours." Jessica tried to yank her hand away, but Sarah held on for a second longer, then released her gently. "My name is Sarah," she said. "I'm a waitress. I make $12 an hour, plus tips. I have a rent payment due in 3 days that I don't have the money for. My life is hard, real hard, but I wouldn't trade places with you for all the money in your father's bank account." Jessica stared at her, her mouth slightly open. Her hand hovered in the air, trembling. "Why?" Jessica asked, her voice cracking. It was the first honest sound she'd made all night. "Because I know who I am," Sarah said. "You're just a reflection of your father's money. You don't even know what you like to eat, do you? You just order what's expensive and send it back to feel something." Sarah crouched down. She began to pick up the bread rolls, one by one. "I'm picking this up," Sarah said, looking up from the floor, "because I respect the cleaning crew, not because I fear you." She stood up, holding the basket. "Now, I'm going to go get you a burger, a greasy, cheap cheeseburger with fries. Not the Wagyu, just a burger, because I bet that's what you actually want." Sarah turned her back on the billionaire's daughter and walked toward the kitchen. For 10 seconds, Jessica Sterling stood there. The entire dining room watched, waiting for the explosion, waiting for the scream, waiting for the glass to shatter. Jessica sat down. She put her face in her hands. "Davis," she mumbled. "Yes, Miss Sterling?" the bodyguard asked, bracing for impact. Don't call my dad." The kitchen of the Obsidian was usually a symphony of organized chaos, but when Sarah walked in and ordered a cheeseburger, the music stopped. Chef Marco, a man with 3 Michelin stars and a temper shorter than a fuse wire, stared at her. He was holding a pair of tweezers he used to arrange microgreens on scallops. "A what?" Marco asked, his voice dangerously low. "A cheeseburger," Sarah repeated, tying her apron tighter. "Medium well, American cheese, brioche bun if you have it, but standard white is fine. And fries, lots of them, salty." "We don't serve burgers, Sarah," Marco spat. "We serve veal Milanese. We serve lobster thermidor. This is not a diner." "The girl at table 1 wants a burger," Sarah said calmly. "And if you don't make it, she's going to come back here and start throwing your copper pots at your head. Do you want that, chef?" Marco looked at the swinging doors, then back at Sarah. He muttered a curse in Italian, threw his tweezers into the sink, and grabbed a slab of ground Wagyu beef. "American cheese on Wagyu," he grumbled, shaking his head. "It is a sin against God." 10 minutes later, Sarah walked back onto the floor. The restaurant was still tense. The patrons were eating, but their eyes were darting toward the window table. Everyone was waiting for the second act. They wanted the meltdown. They wanted the police to arrive. Sarah placed the plate down in front of Jessica. It wasn't fancy. It was a burger, dripping with grease and melted yellow cheese, with a mountain of shoestring fries. "Ketchup," Sarah said, placing a small ramekin down. "Don't use a knife and fork. It tastes better with your hands." Jessica looked at the food. She looked at Sarah. Then she looked at her bodyguard, Davis. Davis gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. "It's safe." Jessica picked up the burger. She took a bite. For a moment, the mask slipped. The untouchable Jessica Sterling vanished, replaced by a hungry, tired teenager. She closed her eyes. She took another bite, then a handful of fries. She ate with a ferocity that was almost heartbreaking. It wasn't just hunger for food, it was a hunger for simplicity. In a life curated by PR teams and stylists, a greasy burger was the only real thing she had touched in months. Sarah stood by the table, refilling the water glass. She didn't hover. She didn't ask, "Is everything to your liking?" She just stood guard. "Why?" Jessica asked between bites. She didn't look up. "Why aren't you afraid of me? Everyone is afraid of me." "Fear is expensive," Sarah said quietly. "It costs you energy. It costs you sleep. I can't afford it." "My dad," Jessica swallowed hard. "My dad says fear is respect. He says if they don't fear you, they'll eat you." "Your dad is a rich man," Sarah replied, "but that doesn't mean he's a smart man. If people only listen to you because they're scared, you're not leading them, Jessica. You're holding them hostage. Eventually, hostages revolt." Jessica stopped eating. She looked at Sarah, really looked at her, for the first time. She saw the scar above Sarah's left eyebrow. She saw the calluses on her hands. She saw the way Sarah stood, balanced, weight on the balls of her feet, ready to move. "You weren't always a waitress, were you?" Jessica whispered. Sarah's expression tightened. The wall went up. "Eat your fries. They're getting cold." Jessica finished the meal in silence. When she was done, she wiped her mouth with the linen napkin. She didn't scream. She didn't demand the manager. "Check, please," Jessica said. The room practically gasped. Jessica Sterling never asked for the check. Her father had an account. She just walked out. "It's on the house," Sarah said. No, Jessica insisted. She reached into her clutch, pulled out a black credit card, the kind made of titanium that invites only, and slapped it on the table. Charge me for the burger, and charge me for the tablecloth I ruined, and... She pulled out a wad of cash. $100 bills. She shoved them under the ketchup ramekin. For the staff, she mumbled. I know I was... difficult. She stood up. Davis, the bodyguard, looked like he had just witnessed a miracle. He mouthed the words, "Thank you" to Sarah as he gathered Jessica's coat. As Jessica walked to the door, she stopped. She turned back to Sarah. "What's your last name?" Jessica asked. "Just Sarah," she said. "Thank you, just Sarah," Jessica said, and then she left. The heavy doors closed. The restaurant exhaled. The tension broke. Conversations resumed, louder this time, filled with gossip about what had just happened. Sarah took the plate to the kitchen. She felt drained. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump. She had gambled everything on that interaction. She thought it was over. She thought she had defused the bomb and could go back to being invisible. She was wrong. At table 7, a man in a blue suit had been recording the entire interaction on his phone. He didn't catch the conversation, but he caught the visual. The waitress grabbing the billionaire's daughter, the finger pointing, the tossing of the phone. He uploaded it to Twitter and TikTok with the caption, "Waitress assaults Jessica Sterling at the Obsidian. Watch until the end." Edrich not assault public freakout. By the time Sarah clocked out at 11 p.m., the video had 200,000 views. By the time she woke up the next morning, it had 4 million. And one of those viewers was Arthur Sterling. The storm arrived at 10:00 a.m. the next morning. It didn't come with rain. It came with a convoy of 3 black Cadillac Escalades pulling up to the curb of the Obsidian. The restaurant wasn't even open for lunch yet. The cleaning crew was vacuuming the carpets. Mr. Henderson, the general manager, was in his office, hyperventilating as he watched his phone blow up with calls from news outlets asking about the assault waitress. The doors of the restaurant flew open. 4 men in suits entered first, advanced security. They swept the room with professional paranoia. Then, the center SUV opened, and Arthur Sterling stepped out. Arthur was 55, but he looked like he was carved out of granite. He wore a bespoke Italian suit that cost more than most people's houses. He didn't walk. He marched. He had a face that stopped conversations. Cold blue eyes, silver hair combed back perfectly, and a jawline that suggested he had never smiled in his life. He didn't care about the food. He didn't care about the view. He cared about one thing, the Sterling brand. And the video of a waitress manhandling his daughter made the Sterling brand look weak. Mr. Henderson ran out of his office, buttoning his jacket with trembling fingers. "Mr. Sterling, what an honor, we didn't expect... Where is she?" Arthur's voice was like grinding stones. He didn't look at Henderson. He looked around the empty dining room. "Who, sir?" "The waitress," Arthur said. "The one who touched my daughter. The one who humiliated my family on the internet. Sarah. She's not scheduled until 4 p.m., but I assure you, sir, I was drafting her termination letter right now. We have 0 tolerance for..." Arthur held up a hand. Henderson shut up instantly. "Get her here," Arthur said. "Now." "But, sir, I don't know if she..." "Mr. Henderson," Arthur said, stepping closer. "I own the building this restaurant is in. I own the bank that holds your mortgage. If that woman is not in front of me in 30 minutes, the Obsidian will be a Spirit Halloween store by next week. Do you understand?" Henderson scrambled for the phone. Sarah was in her small studio apartment in Queens when the call came. She was drinking black coffee and watching the rain hit the window. She knew this was coming. She had seen the video. She knew she couldn't hide. When Henderson screamed at her over the phone to get to the restaurant now, she didn't argue. She put on her coat. She didn't put on her uniform. She wore jeans, boots, and a grey sweater. She wasn't going there to work. She was going there to end it. She took the subway. She walked the final blocks. She saw the black SUVs outside and sighed. "Here we go," she whispered to herself. She walked into the restaurant. The closed sign was flipped. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. The staff had been cleared out. It was just Henderson, the 4 security guards, and Arthur Sterling, who was sitting at the exact table Jessica had sat at the night before. Arthur was reading a file, a manila folder. When Sarah walked in, the security guards tensed, hands moving toward their jackets. Sarah noted it instantly. Standard formation. 2 on the perimeter, 2 close protection. Ex-military, likely private contractors. "You're late," Arthur said, not looking up from the file. "I took the train," Sarah said. She didn't apologize. She walked right up to the table. "Mr. Henderson said you wanted to see me." Arthur closed the file. He looked at her. His eyes narrowed. He was used to people cowering. He was used to tears. He was expecting a begging waitress who wanted to keep her job. Instead, he saw a woman standing with her weight evenly distributed, hands loose at her sides, eyes locked on his. "You have a lot of nerve," Arthur said softly. "Do you know what you did? I served your daughter a burger and stopped her from crying," Sarah said. "You assaulted her." Arthur slammed his hand on the table. "I saw the video. You grabbed her. You humiliated her in public. And then you fed her garbage." "I stopped her from throwing a bread basket at a sommelier," Sarah corrected him. "And I fed her because she was starving. Not for food, Mr. Sterling. For attention. She's a lonely kid, acting out because her father is too busy buying shipping routes to have dinner with her." The silence that followed was deafening. Henderson let out a squeak of terror from the corner. Arthur slowly stood up. He towered over Sarah. "You think you know my family?" he hissed. "You are a waitress. You carry plates. You are nothing." He picked up the manila folder and tossed it toward her. It slid across the table and fell to the floor at Sarah's feet. "I had my team run a background check on you this morning," Arthur said, a cruel smile forming. "Sarah Miller, born in Ohio, high school dropout, no college, drifting from city to city for the last 10 years, no fixed address for longer than 6 months, no family, no history." Arthur stepped around the table. He circled her like a shark. "You're a ghost, Sarah. A loser. And you made the mistake of touching a Sterling. I'm not just going to have you fired. I'm going to make sure you never work in this city again. I'm going to sue you for assault. I'm going to bury you in so much legal debt you'll be in prison by Christmas." He stopped in front of her, leaning down to whisper in her ear. "Beg me," he said. "Beg me for mercy, and maybe I'll just let you leave town." Sarah looked at the folder on the floor. Then she looked at Arthur. She didn't blink. A small, sad smile played on her lips. "You didn't look deep enough, Arthur," she said. Arthur frowned. "What?" "The background check," Sarah said, her voice dropping to that same low, commanding tone she had used on Jessica. "It's a standard civilian sweep. It only goes back to public records. You didn't check the redacted files." Arthur stepped back, confused. "What are you talking about?" Sarah reached into her pocket. The security guards lunged forward, drawing their weapons, tasers and batons. "Stop!" Arthur commanded them. He watched Sarah. She didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a cheap plastic lighter. She flicked it on, watching the flame dance. "My name isn't Sarah Miller," she said. And I didn't drop out of high school. I was recruited out of MIT when I was 19. Arthur stared at her. Recruited by who? You know who, she said. Because 10 years ago, in a warehouse in Prague, you paid a team of mercenaries $3 million to extract a defector named Krovos, a man who knew too much about your shipping lanes. Arthur's face went white. All the blood drained from his cheeks. He staggered back, gripping the back of a chair. That is impossible, he stammered. No one knows about Prague. That file was burned. I didn't just read the file, Arthur, Sarah said, snapping the lighter shut. I was the one who breached the warehouse. I was the one who got Krovos out. She took a step toward the billionaire, and for the first time in 20 years, Arthur Sterling looked terrified. I've been hiding for a long time, Sarah said, trying to live a quiet life, trying to forget what people like you make people like me do. But if you want to go to war over a cheeseburger, if you want to dig into my past. She leaned in, her eyes cold as ice. Be careful, Arthur. You might not like what comes out of the dark. The air in the restaurant had turned into a vacuum. The security guards, sensing the shift in their employer's demeanor, lowered their weapons but didn't holster them. They looked confused. They were paid to fight threats they could see. Men with guns, paparazzi with cameras. They didn't know how to fight a ghost from the past. Arthur Sterling, the man who could crash the stock market with a whisper, slowly sank back into his chair. He looked older, suddenly. The granite facade cracked. Everyone out, Arthur croaked. Sir? The lead agent asked. Protocol dictates. I said get out, Arthur roared, his voice echoing off the empty wine glasses. Wait in the cars, all of you, now! The guards hesitated, glanced at Sarah, who stood perfectly still, and then retreated. The heavy doors clicked shut. It was just the billionaire and the waitress. Arthur ran a hand through his silver hair. Sarah Miller, he muttered. That's the alias they gave you after the Vienna Accords fell apart. I thought you were dead. The report said the whole unit was burned. The report was written to protect you, Arthur, Sarah said, pulling out a chair and sitting opposite him. She didn't ask for permission. If the world knew that Sterling Logistics was moving illegal arms through the Czech Republic to secure mining rights, you wouldn't be sitting here. You'd be in a federal supermax. Arthur flinched. I did what I had to do for the company, for my legacy. And look at your legacy, Sarah said, gesturing to the empty seat where Jessica had sat the night before. She's 19, Arthur. She's spiraling. She treats people like garbage because she thinks that's what strength looks like. She learned that from you. Arthur looked down at his hands. I gave her everything, the best schools, the best clothes, unlimited credit. I built an empire for her. You gave her things, Sarah corrected. You didn't give her a father. You gave her fear. You showed her that money solves problems and that people are disposable. Last night, I didn't see a monster. I saw a kid begging for boundaries. She threw that bread basket because she wanted someone, anyone, to tell her no. Because you never do. Arthur looked up, his eyes wet. She hates me. She won't even look at me unless she needs money. She doesn't hate you, Sarah said softly. She's testing you. She's trying to see if you care enough to stop her. And every time you send a lawyer or a fixer to clean up her mess, you prove to her that she's just a business expense to you. Arthur was silent for a long time. The silence stretched, heavy and painful. What do you want? Arthur asked finally. Money? I can wire you $5 million right now. 10 million. Just keep the Prague file buried and leave my family alone. Sarah laughed, a dry, humorless sound. She leaned back. I don't want your blood money, Arthur. I have enough money buried in offshore accounts to buy this whole block if I wanted to. I work here because I need the noise. I need the simplicity. I serve burgers so I don't have to think about the people I killed for men like you. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. Here is the deal. This is the price of my silence. Arthur braced himself. You are going to take Jessica to dinner, Sarah said. Arthur blinked. What? Tonight, Sarah continued. Not at the Obsidian, not at some gala. You're going to take her to a diner in Jersey, or a pizza place in Brooklyn, somewhere where nobody knows your name. You're going to leave the bodyguards in the car. You're going to leave your phone in the car, and you are going to talk to her. You're going to tell her about your childhood. You're going to ask her what music she likes. You are going to be a dad. That's it? Arthur asked, bewildered. No, Sarah said. And you're going to cut her off. Cut her off? The credit cards, the private jets, the staff. It's poison, Arthur. It's killing her. Tell her she has to finish college or get a job. Tell her you love her too much to watch her turn into a monster. She will scream. She will cry. She will hate you for 6 months, but in 5 years, she might actually respect you. Arthur stared at Sarah. He looked terrified. The idea of emotional vulnerability was scarier to him than an indictment. I don't know if I can, he whispered. You built a global shipping empire, Sarah said, standing up. I think you can eat a slice of pizza with your daughter. If you don't, well, I still have the contact info for The Hague. It's your choice. Arthur stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at the waitress, the woman who had been a ghost, a weapon, and now a savior. He extended his hand. Thank you, Sarah, he said. Sarah didn't shake it. She just nodded. Go be a father, Arthur, before it's too late. Arthur turned to leave. As he reached the door, it opened. Jessica was standing there. She had been standing just outside the glass vestibule. She had heard the yelling. She had seen her father, the terrifying Arthur Sterling, sitting with his head in his hands. She looked at her father. Then she looked at Sarah. Dad? She asked, her voice small. Arthur looked at his daughter, really looked at her. He saw the fear behind the makeup. Jessica, Arthur said, his voice trembling slightly. Get in the car. We're going to get pizza. Pizza? Jessica frowned. But I have a fitting for Fashion Week. Cancel it, Arthur said. We have a lot to talk about. Jessica looked at Sarah. Sarah gave her a small wink. Jessica didn't argue. She walked out with her father. For the first time ever, they walked side by side, not in a phalanx of security. The rain had not stopped since Arthur Sterling and his daughter walked out of the Obsidian, leaving a stunned staff and a ghost from the past behind them. The drive to Brooklyn was quiet, deadly quiet. The 3 Cadillac Escalades had been dismissed, much to the horror of the head of security. Arthur had insisted on driving his own car, a dusty, vintage Porsche 911 he kept in a garage in Tribeca, and hadn't driven in 4 years. The engine purred, a mechanical sound that seemed too loud in the silence between father and daughter. Jessica sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, staring out the window at the blurred city lights. She felt like she was in a fever dream. Her father, the man who usually communicated via assistants and lawyers, was driving, and they were going to eat pizza. They ended up at Sal's, a hole-in-the-wall joint on a corner in Williamsburg that smelled of oregano, yeast, and old wood. It was the kind of place Arthur had gone to when he was 22, before the billions, before the logistics empire, before he forgot how to be a human being. They sat in a red vinyl booth with duct tape on the corner. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. "This is gross," Jessica muttered, wiping the table with a napkin. "The table is sticky." "It's character," Arthur said, his voice stiff. He was out of practice. He felt naked without his suit jacket, which he had left in the car. He looked at the laminated menu. "Pepperoni? Or do you still like— what was it? Hawaiian?" Jessica looked at him, her eyes narrowing. "I haven't liked Hawaiian since I was 7, Dad. I'm 19. "Right," Arthur said. He swallowed hard. "Right. Pepperoni, then." He ordered a large pie and 2 Cokes. When the waitress, a college kid with blue hair and a nose ring, brought the drinks, Arthur stared at the paper straw. "Jessica," he started, his hands clasping together on the sticky table. "We need to talk. About Sarah. About tonight." "She's crazy," Jessica snapped, though there was no heat in it. "She grabbed me. She should be in jail." "She was right," Arthur said. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jessica froze. Her father never admitted anyone else was right. Arthur Sterling was the center of the universe. Everyone else just orbited him. "What?" "She was right," Arthur repeated, looking his daughter in the eye. "I have failed you. I thought if I gave you everything I never had, you'd be happy. But I just made you miserable. I turned you into someone who throws bread at people." "I was angry," Jessica defended herself, her voice rising. "You're spoiled," Arthur said. He didn't shout. He said it with a heavy, crushing sadness. "And it's my fault. But that ends tonight." The pizza arrived, steaming and greasy. Arthur took a slice. He didn't use a knife and fork. He folded it, New York style, and took a bite. The sauce was too sweet, the cheese too rubbery, but it tasted like reality. "What do you mean, it ends tonight?" Jessica asked, ignoring the food. Arthur wiped his mouth. "Tomorrow morning I am freezing your black card. I am cancelling the lease on the penthouse in Soho. I am selling the G-Wagon." Jessica laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Good one, Dad. Very funny. Sarah put you up to this? It's a scare tactic. I get it. It's not a tactic, Jess. It's a reset." Arthur reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He wrote a check and slid it across the table. It was for $5,000. "That is the last money you will receive from me until you graduate college or hold down a job for 6 months, Arthur said. "Rent a studio, get a roommate, take the subway, figure it out." Jessica stared at the check. Her face went from pale to red in seconds. She stood up, knocking the table. "You can't do that," she screamed. The few other patrons in the pizza place looked over. "I'm a Sterling. You can't make me live like them." "Sit down," Arthur said. His voice had that granite edge again, but this time it wasn't cruel. It was firm. "You are a Sterling, which means you are smart and you are tough. Prove it. If you can't survive without my money, then you don't deserve the name." Jessica stood there, chest heaving. She looked at the door. She looked at her father. She realized, with a terrifying clarity, that he wasn't bluffing. The waitress, that just Sarah, had unlocked something in him. Jessica sat down. She pulled the check toward her. She didn't say thank you. She didn't eat the pizza. She just cried. Silent, angry tears. Arthur watched her, his heart breaking, but he didn't reach out to fix it. He let her cry. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. The next morning, at the Obsidian, the staff prepared for the lunch rush. Mr. Henderson, the general manager, was vibrating with anxiety. He expected police. He expected lawsuits. He expected Arthur Sterling to bulldoze the building. Instead, at 10 a.m., a courier arrived with a package. Henderson signed for it, his hands shaking. He took it to his office and opened it. Inside was a crisp, typed letter on heavy sterling logistics stationery. To the management of the Obsidian. Enclosed is a check for $50,000. This is to cover the disturbance caused by my family on Tuesday night, and to provide a bonus of $5,000 to every member of your floor staff who was working that shift. Specifically, Mr. Timothy Vance and the sommelier, Henri. Furthermore, I am withdrawing any complaints regarding the employee known as Sarah. She is to be considered resigned in good standing. Sincerely, Arthur Sterling. Henderson stared at the check. He nearly fainted. He ran out to the floor, waving the paper. It's a miracle! We're not fired! We're getting bonuses! The staff cheered. Timothy, the waiter who had been crying the night before, looked like he had won the lottery. But Henri, the sommelier, asked the question that mattered. Where is Sarah? They went to the locker room. Her locker, number 14, was open. It was empty. Her apron was folded neatly on the shelf. Her name tag was placed on top of it. There was no note, no forwarding address, no goodbye. Just emptiness. Julian, the maitre d', tried to call the number on her file. This number is no longer in service, the automated voice said. He checked her address, a small apartment in Queens. He actually went there a week later, driven by a nagging curiosity. The landlord told him that Sarah Miller had moved out overnight, paid her lease in cash, and left no forwarding address. She was a ghost, the landlord said, scratching his head. Never got mail, never had visitors, just gone. The legend of Sarah began to grow. In the kitchens of New York, line cooks whispered about the waitress who brought down a billionaire. Some said she was an angel. Some said she was a government spook. Some said she was just a woman who had had enough. But while the legend grew, the reality was playing out in a small, cramped apartment in the Bronx. Jessica Sterling was living in hell. Or rather, a fourth-floor walk-up with no elevator and a radiator that clanked like a dying engine. The first month was a disaster. She blew through the $5,000 in 3 weeks, mostly on Ubers and takeout, because she didn't know how to cook or use the subway. When the money ran out, she called her father. He didn't answer. She called his assistant. The assistant, a woman Jessica had terrorized for years, politely told her that Mr. Sterling was unavailable and to please not call again. Jessica sold her purses, then her shoes. She stood in a consignment shop on Madison Avenue, watching a woman buy her favorite Louis Vuitton bag for a fraction of what it was worth. I need a job, Jessica told the shop owner, desperate. We're not hiring, the owner said, looking at Jessica's manicured nails. And frankly, honey, you don't look like you know how to work. That stung more than the hunger. Jessica applied to be a receptionist, rejected. She applied to be a hostess at a club, rejected. Too recognized, too much liability. Finally, she landed a job at a chain bookstore in Brooklyn. Minimum wage, stocking shelves. The first day, her feet bled in her boots. The second day, a customer yelled at her because they couldn't find a copy of a self-help book. Jessica opened her mouth to scream, "Do you know who I am?" But she stopped. She wasn't Jessica Sterling, the heiress, anymore. She was Jessica, the girl who needed this paycheck to buy ramen. "I'll check the back for you," she said, swallowing her pride. It took 3 months for the anger to fade. It was replaced by exhaustion. But in that exhaustion, something strange happened. Jessica started to talk to people. Real people. Her co-worker, a guy named Mike, was studying graphic design at night. He shared his lunch with her one day, a turkey sandwich. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. "You look like you've never eaten a sandwich before. Mike laughed. Not one I didn't pay $30 for, Jessica admitted. One rainy Tuesday, 6 months after the incident at the Obsidian, Jessica was shelving books in the biography section. She picked up a book about the Cold War. She flipped through it, bored, until a photo caught her eye. It was a grainy, black and white photo of a diplomatic summit in Prague 10 years ago. In the background, standing behind a general, was a woman. She was younger, her hair was shorter, and she was wearing a military uniform, but the eyes were unmistakable. It was Sarah. The caption read, "Unidentified security detail, 2015. Jessica stared at the photo. Sarah hadn't lied. She really had been part of history, and she had left it all to serve burgers and teach a spoiled brat a lesson. Jessica bought the book with her employee discount. That night, she called her father. "Dad? Jessica?" Arthur's voice was cautious. "Do you need money?" "No," Jessica said. I got my first paycheck today. I wanted to know if you wanted to get pizza." "My treat. I can afford a pepperoni pie." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, a sound Jessica had never heard before. Her father was crying. "I would love that, honey. I would love that." The reunion at the Obsidian happened a week later. Jessica didn't come to eat. She came to close the circle. She walked into the restaurant wearing jeans and a simple sweater she bought at Target. She looked healthier. The dark circles from partying were gone. She looked like a 19-year-old girl, not a runway model made of glass. When she asked Julian, the maitre d', about Sarah, and he told her she was gone, the disappointment was physical. Jessica felt a heavy weight in her chest. She had wanted to say thank you. She had wanted to show Sarah that she wasn't a monster anymore. She handed Julian the envelope. "If she ever comes back," Jessica said. "Please." "I will keep it safe," Julian promised. Jessica turned to the window. Table 4. It was empty. For a moment, she could almost see Sarah standing there, holding the bread basket, eyes burning with that terrifying, beautiful truth. "She saved my life," Jessica whispered. "I beg your pardon?" Julian asked. "She saved my life," Jessica repeated, louder. "I was drowning, Julian. Everyone let me drown because I was rich. She was the only one who cared enough to pull me out of the water." She walked out of the restaurant into the cool New York night. She hailed a cab, a yellow one. As she got in, she looked back at the restaurant one last time. 2,000 miles away, in a small diner off a dusty highway in New Mexico, a woman was wiping down a counter. Her name tag said, Betty. She had dark hair, a scar over her eye, and she moved with an efficiency that suggested she was overqualified for the job. The diner was quiet. An old trucker sat at the counter, nursing a black coffee. On the small television mounted in the corner, the news was playing. A segment came on about the new face of Sterling Logistics. The screen showed Arthur Sterling and his daughter, Jessica. They were cutting a ribbon at a new community center in the Bronx. Jessica was speaking into the microphone, looking radiant and grounded. "My father and I want to give back," Jessica said on the screen. "We learned recently that true value isn't in what you keep, but in what you serve." The woman named Betty stopped wiping the counter. She watched the screen. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. "You know them?" the trucker asked, noticing her attention. "No," the woman said, turning off the TV. "Just some rich folks. You want a refill on that coffee, hun?" "Please," the trucker said. "You're new here, aren't you? Where you from?" "Oh, here and there," she said, pouring the coffee with a steady hand. "Just passing through." She looked out the window at the vast, empty desert. The file on Arthur Sterling was buried deep in an encrypted server in Zurich. The name Sarah Miller was dead. But the work of fixing the broken things that nobody else could see, that never ended. She was a ghost. She was a waitress. She was the karma that walked through the door when you least expected it. And she was ready for the next shift. And that is where the record ends. Most people go through life thinking that the elites are untouchable gods, immune to the struggles of regular people. But this story proves that underneath the Chanel dresses and the titanium credit cards, they are just as broken, just as scared, and just as desperate for boundaries as anyone else. Sarah didn't use violence to win. She didn't use blackmail for money. She used the one weapon the billionaire couldn't buy, reality. She reminded a father of his job and a daughter of her humanity. It makes you wonder, how many people are walking past us every day, disguised as just a waitress, just a janitor, or just a driver, who hold more power, more history, and more integrity in their pinky finger than the people on the magazine covers. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that money can't buy class, and that it's never too late to change. And make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. If you were Sarah, knowing all the secrets she knew, would you have walked away like she did? Or would you have taken the money? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.